you got into med school after 4 years of college?
So, yeah, so when I decided that I wanted to go to med school, that meant I had to actually quit working during the day because the pre-med recs were only offered during the day, and I started working part-time at night and in a frozen foods warehouse, believe it or not. And then doing my pre-med recs during the day, got them done, and then took the MCATs.
Wow.
And the rest was history.
Where'd you get into med school?
I got into actually, Joel, a bunch of them. But what's interesting is that again, I took, the MCATs were done twice. There's an early one in the spring and then the late one towards the end of summer, beginning of fall. And again, since I'm doing all this on my own and kind of not knowing what was what, I was like, I don't know. So I took the late MCAT, and by, you're supposed to start applying before the scores are back. And I, again, wasn't sure how well I'd done. So I was kind of laid off the mark. And by the time I found out that I had really done very well, I had missed the application dates for a number of schools, including Stanford, but they saw my scores and sent me the application. They recruited me. So, and that's where I ended up going. Yeah.
And then just to bring your medical history. So medical school at Stanford, pretty prestigious. You did a internal medicine residency where?
First year, UCSF Fresno program, and then I switched to Georgetown because I actually didn't like that program. It wasn't as academic as I had wanted.
Georgetown all the way across the country.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then did you do pulmonary or critical care?
So I actually did not do a critical care fellowship. I've just worked in the ICU almost yeah. So I kind of got grandfathered.
Let me ask you a provocative question. If you grew up in a different part of San Francisco Bay Area, in a white part, how much different do you think your march to completing your medical education? What were you, 32, 33 years old when you finished residency? Something like that. I mean, how much different do you think, that course, how the obstacles, the funding, the support, the lack of support, you obviously are a very gifted human being, and you let your brain take you through all these, this transformation. But tell me about that.
That's Joel. That's a really interesting question, because there was a question very similar to that on Stanford's application. The way they phrased it was, tell us how growing up in disadvantaged circumstances have affected you, and your, I guess your way in life. And what I said to them, and the way I answered that was that growing up in the neighborhoods I grew up in taught me to be to develop ingenuity, creativity, to be persistent, to, when someone threw a roadblock in my way, instead of saying, okay, I can't, I would figure out a way around it, under it, over it, through it. It taught me to not take no for an answer necessarily. It taught me to be very critical of the things that people say, not for the sake of just being contrary, but to really see, is this, is it the way they say it is, or is this being done just because that's the way people always do it? So certainly, I think that if I had grown up in more affluent circumstances, there's no question I would have had a much more a swifter path to medical school. It's interesting to me to wonder what impact it would have had on my character, and would I be, and how I would be different from where I am now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a question I can't answer.
I mean, is there a memory of a particularly ugly interaction during medical school residency that you think you would have avoided, or it just your intellect and other interpersonal skills? You were just in the crowd. You were doing great things.
Um, are you going to Summerfest this year?
I am not. I've been many times, but
Bummer. Well, the reason I asked that question is because I was going to say, when I see you at a conference, we will have that particular conversation.
okay, no problem.
Because I know, really, it's a conversation I would love to have with you, but it's way too deep for here.
Okay.
But to try and give you a general answer, there were just I mean, people would tell me no because nobody had done things before that I wanted to do, and they would say, "Well, no, you can't do it," and I would figure out ways to do it, to get it done. And most of the time, it was not an acrimonious endeavor. It was just, okay, you can't see that it can be done. I'm going to figure out how to do it and show you it can.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's one of my strongest character traits. And let me also give God his due, because someone who's that driven and determined, who doesn't have a conscience and a voice telling you to have a sense of integrity, to always examine your motives, and to make sure you're doing what you're doing for the right reasons, you can become a real jerk, because you can use that force, that drive, that will to run over people, to manipulate people, to be inconsiderate of people. And so I really thank God that he always reminds me that it's always of paramount importance to do what's right, not just what we want. And that what the right thing always encompasses what's best for the collective good.
Okay. And for anybody that didn't catch that, go join Dr. Mills at Summerfest, which occurs in Pennsylvania.
July 5th to 9th this year.
It's a tradition of a plant-based conference and education. And Dr. Mills is a very popular speaker, brings in a lot of biblical references to leading a clean and healthy life, focusing on plant-based.